Welcome to the afternoon session of the 2015 Illumos Day. This will be the technical talks. My name is Dan McDonald. I'm OmniOS engineering lead for OmniTI. And this is the introductory talk. Today's speakers will be me, where I will quickly go over Illumos. I don't know how many new people there are here. How many people here are new to Illumos Day? Okay. How many people are new to Illumos in the last 12 months? Okay. Not bad. Good. Okay. So some of the introductory material may be new to you. You've seen some of it before in various YouTube talks, but that's fine. After me, Patrick Mooney from Joyent will be talking about the work in LX branded zones, something new and exciting everybody's been following. After him, we will take a break. There will be coffee and cookies, and then when we come back, we'll resume with Dave Pacheco, who will be talking about MDB, old stuff and new stuff. And we're going to close today with Ryan Zazeski, who will be talking about fixing bugs in Illumos. Ryan, along with Patrick, are both new-ish to the Illumos community, and I think it's good that we see new people and their experience with Illumos so we can get even more new people to join up and start contributing. We do have enough people, small enough people in the room. Brian suggested we go around and get everybody's name really quickly. I think that's a good idea. So we're going to start up front. Go ahead, sir. Abel Matthew. Yep.
Alan Delaney. Rolf Martin Foster. Alex Creek. Stephen Bradford. Dave Pacheco. Ryan Gensel.
Way back there.
Jason Snett. Steve Rogers. Anthony Jocko. Jack Beats. Patrick Mooney. Ryan Zazeski. Jay Kurtz. Joey Grassa.
Glasses.
Trey Palmer. Jeremy Smith. Jordan Connor. Michael Kopsha. Bill Finley. Phil Ewing. Eric Stroud. Alexi Batigan. Matthew Sutton. Albert Lee. Will Benton. Alex Sergey. Peter Sanford.
Okay. Very good. I think there will be a few more people who come in here late, but you know, this is what you get for being on time. I would also like to thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank Joyent, who will be also speaking here today. I'd also like to thank my own employer, OmniTI. My boss at OmniTI had a suggestion that half of you tweet thanks to Joyent for sponsoring Illumos Day, and the other half of you thanks to OmniTI for sponsoring Illumos Day. And if you're an employee of one of them, you got to do the other. So when I do this, I will tweet thank you, Joyent, just for an example. You could, you know, that's fine, but I just want to make sure we get some coverage. You know, it's statistical multiplexing. So for people who are new, what comes to mind when you think of Illumos? You think of the obvious things. You think of ZFS. Lindo covered that this morning. You talk about dynamic tracing, dtrace, where you're able to instrument and debug things that are running in production. Network virtualization, it's often known by its old son codename Crossbow, where you can create virtual interfaces and even an entire network in a single physical box. I use this to my advantage a lot on my home server, and afterwards I can show you exactly what I mean. It's a pretty interesting setup. Zones, which nowadays you hear all about containers and Docker, and well, this is something we've had for a decade, going back to Solaris 10. Its first instance that people use are lightweight Illumos instances. I believe you can buy or rent one from Joyent. They call them smart machines. And you can also have kernel virtual machine zones, which are a full hardware emulated VM. And later today, you will learn about LX zones. I won't say too much about it because I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. The other two three-letter acronyms you hear about with Illumos are the fault management architecture, which indicates faults in hardware, faults in software, and alerts administrators about what needs to be fixed, if anything, and the service management framework, or SMF. Another thing that you've been seeing a lot in Linux community lately is who's Start Manager. There's systemd, and then there are other ones, but again, SMF has been around for nearly a decade, since Solaris 10. So, little quick history. Back when it was Solaris and Open Solaris, you would assemble the Solaris CD or DVD you would get from various consolidations, which are repositories of software. The well-known ones were the desktop consolidation, which is where X Windows and any applications that used X would go. The userland repository, which would be other people's OEM software that you would pull in, possibly patch, and then package up. And the main one that everybody who's an Illumos person here, Illumos contributors, worked on, the OS and networking repository. Those bits stopped receiving updates just over 5 years ago, and that is what Illumos has taken and run with. Oracle took the ball home. We in the Illumos community brought another ball to play with. That's our website. So back in the old days, you would get Open Solaris. It would be assembled from these consolidations. And the other consolidations, by the way, even today, are still open sourced. Now, you don't see half of what the work is done because Oracle took OSNet and took that ball and went home with it. And, you know, these things happen. Yeah, that's a racing lawnmower. Apparently that's a thing. Reminder, Oracle is not involved with Illumos at all. I don't think that's as much of a problem now as it was last year, but I would still get customers who would be like, oh, your Solaris distribution and OmniOS. No. We are not Solaris anything because Oracle stopped that from happening. I've heard an adjective, Solarish, being used to describe anything that Oracle Solaris and any Illumos distros have in common. For example, I'll mention PTPD later, Precision Time Protocol. I did some work to get it to work for Illumos, and it turns out it also allowed it to work with Solaris. So that was a Solarish modification to PTPD, as it were. Illumos is open sourced under the Community Development and Distribution License, which its closest other license analog is Mozilla Public License. Joyers in the audience, correct me if I'm wrong, your more recently open sourced stuff is done under MPL 2. Is that correct? Yes. So it's a weak copyleft license where an existing file is modified, you must contribute the changes back. If you have new files, you can do what you want with them, which allows a CDDL licensed entity to be dropped into other licensed code, which is why OpenZFS exists on many other platforms, for example. The upstream Illumos repository, which is called Illumos Gate, contains the kernel, most system libraries, and most system commands. If you look at two extremes where you have, say, FreeBSD over here, which is completely self-contained, all of its source is there, you turn the crank and you build FreeBSD. On the other side, you have Linux, which is nothing more than a kernel. You turn that, you pick your libc, and apparently there's more than one, and you can... I don't use Linux, sorry. And so you pick your libraries and you pick your commands, and then you have a Linux distro at the end of the day. Illumos has distributions too, because while our boundary is a bit further up the stack, it's at the library level more than the syscall level, you still need other things to go along with it. And so when people use Illumos, they use the distribution. OmniOS, that's the one I am in charge of. There's Joyent SmartOS, which is hypervisor focused for clouds. The Joyent public cloud is built on top of SmartOS, obviously. OpenIndiana, which is the desktop choice for Illumos and is the most direct inheritor of what was Open Solaris. Nexenta Store is a purpose-built storage appliance, and it's free to use up to a certain number of terabytes, and then it becomes essentially a commercial product, and they charge you for that. Oh, by the way, OmniOS and SmartOS do have paid support options for them, and we're more than happy to help with that, either one, anybody, any joyers there, or me. There are other distributions too. Triblix, I mentioned that first because he was just, Peter Tribble, who does Triblix, was talking about how he was trying to make his Illumos build very small and fit on very small 32-bit machines, which is something the other distros aren't going to be necessarily interested in, but Triblix is. There's Delos, which is put out by Igor Kozakov. It's a Debian packaged general purpose Illumos distribution. I believe it has a desktop as well. There's OpenSXCE for those of you who miss System 5 packaging. You can use Open. hey, there's something for everybody here. But yeah, OpenSXCE does exist, and that's another distribution. One more steal from previous talks, but basically every Illumos distro is built from different sets, somewhat different sets of parts, except we all have Illumos in common. OpenIndiana looks just like the OpenSolaris chart I showed you earlier. OmniOS basically builds from 2 different places, and we pull in other bits to make our version of userland, which is called OmniOS build. Now, Joyent people can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you start with your Illumos child, you have a small bit of extras called Illumos Extra, and then anything on top, a lot of Node.js you have, and that creates SmartOS. Do I have that mostly correct?
SmartOS Live is the beginning.
Okay, thank you. So, but yeah, pretty much that. And these aren't the only ones, like I said. Now, you can contribute in a lot of ways. I'm going to start with the anybody can contribute vector, which is start by using your favorite Illumos distro. Most of them have easy downloads. If you want to use it on a cloud, you can go right to the Joyent public cloud and get a smart machine, and that is immediately a lightweight zone. It's a lightweight instance of Illumos. OmniOS has AWS images if you're already stuck on Amazon. A recent email thread on the Illumos developers list shows that there are several other cloud providers who will be more than happy to set you up with something Illumos, whether it's Bytemark, Cloud Sigma, which I believe uses one of the Illumos distros under its covers, and OVH. I think all of those are in Europe, but they are other cloud providers who can give you a way to instantiate Illumos for your use.
Yeah, there's a new one called VRocket, which is really trying out the digital edition demographic reviews.
VRocket?
VRocket, that's,
Okay.
that's all container-based, LX and SmartOS.
Okay. I'd also like you to share your experiences. We have a very strong Twitter presence and social media, and we're other places. We like to hear about it. We have several IRC channels open. Pound Illumos is there. Most distros have their own channels too. SmartOS has a channel. OmniOS has a channel. Go ahead and blog if you're having a good time with Illumos. We'd like to hear about it. And let your upstream software projects that you know using Illumos. I mentioned PTBD earlier. I had a customer who wanted PTBD to be running on Illumos, so I made some modifications. It was surprisingly few. And then I upstreamed them into the PTBD process, and now they say runs on Illumos systems. This is an important one. Let hardware vendors know that you're using Illumos. I think it's the one thing, and I will have a dedicated slide to this later, that your hardware vendor should know what you're using when you buy their hardware. Supermicro, for example, kind of gets this because they have, some of their motherboards have the LSI SAS on them, which also has the IT firmware, which basically means just be an HBA, so you can attach a ton of SAS drives to those particular Supermicro motherboards. And of course, if you're using it and you find something broken, file a bug. Illumos.org/issues is our bug tracking page. You can search there to see if somebody's beaten you to the punch, or if somebody hasn't, you can log in and file a bug, and somebody will pay attention. Sir? Illumos.org is the upstream entity for Illumos Gate, and we all of our distros have clones, children, forks maybe is too strong of a word, but of Illumos Gate. It's another thing I'm going to talk about for a little bit because Illumos itself is weakly, if at all, governed right now. And again, I'll talk about this because because when I get to that, it'll be a repeat of what the founder of the Illumos project, Garrett Moore, talked about last year. For those of you who are inclined to write code, all of our repositories are on GitHub. Not just the upstream Illumos Gate, but also most, if not all, of the distros are up there as well. Delos, I think, is on Bitbucket and uses Mercurial, for example, but most of the other ones are on GitHub. You can compile stock Illumos Gate suitable for upstreaming, not only on OpenIndiana, which was always the case, but starting this year, you can do it on OmniOS as well, and I think with those changes, it makes being able to build Illumos Gate on other distros that much simpler. We've broken a lot of the hardwired ties, like what Perl version you're using and things like that. For small changes or independent modules, libraries or commands, you can just build those individual components too. I need to update, I have a blog entry, it's called On Developing Small, and I think I need to update that a little more, and we also need a little bit more tooling upstream to help, if you find a bug in a command, it should be easy to just build that command and not have to build the entire world to make that happen. And anything I talk about here in the contribution path is a shrink-to-fit process, meaning if a small spelling mistake in a man page is what you're fixing, it's not going to need nearly the scrutiny as rewriting a driver or refactoring a piece of TCP IP. You should subscribe to the developers mailing list if you're interested in writing code for Illumos. There's the URL to subscribe. It's a list box, run list. Once you have changes that you're happy with, you should get code review, which comes from your peers. And once you have enough review from there, you should submit it to the RTI advocates. It's a mailing list with a small number of people, and they will approve or ask you to make further changes. And if they approve, they will take your code and integrate it straight into Illumos Gate. This is a reflection of the development process that we did at Sun, where any engineer could make changes, they would need code review, and then we had an automated tool for it, the RTI tool, that would then ping the RTI advocates, and one of them would take the request to integrate and take care of it. Distro-specific repos, for example, OmniOS build, may have different procedures. OmniOS build, we are happy to take pull requests from GitHub directly or issues from GitHub directly because we don't see as much turnover and change there. So your distro may vary there. But Illumos Gate, you have to go through this process. And again, it's shrink to fit. If it's a small change, you're only going to need one reviewer. And the RTI advocate will pretty much look at it and go, yeah, that's right, and run with it as soon as they have cycles. A good contribution, when you get into a larger one, should have an analysis in the bug report or even in the code's block comments. Some recent large changes coming from Join have had some epic block comments, and they're very fun to read. If it's a bug fix, we want to know when it was introduced, especially if the bug was introduced post-Open Solaris. I just approved an integration where I said, I will approve this, but you have to put in the bug tracker which bug this was introduced in, and it was something that got put back less than 12 months ago, and so we just put in a link to it, and it's like, okay, great, you know what introduced the bug, here's what fixed it, I take it. We need to know how you tested it. Illumos itself has user source test as a directory. The folks at Delphix set that up, and it's been a godsend because you should be able to run things in user source test, and if they break or if they improve, then we know what to do about your change set. And again, anything is shrink to fit. You need epic block comments for epic code, but you won't for a smaller change. I'm going to jump over to the state of the community now, and much of this is a repeat of what Garrett said last year. Illumos is now 5 years old. August 2010 is when it happened, and not long after Illumos was formed, Oracle decided behind everybody's back to take their ball and go home. There is forward technical progress. What's interesting is that not all of that forward technical progress has been upstreamed yet, and there are a lot of reasons for it, both good and bad, and I'm going to talk about those in another couple of slides. Like I said, much of what Garrett said last year remains unchanged with respect to the general state of the community. Some upstream technical changes in the past 12 months. In no particular order, I just pulled these mostly as I saw them scroll by. We have the ability to boot off an EFI partition or GPT booting. This might not matter as much for SmartOS where it's loading everything into RAM, but that matters a lot for OpenIndiana or OmniOS or some of the other distros. It also means in some cases the non-Illumos code needs to catch up with the Illumos code, like installers, for example. We are able to build stock Illumos Gate on distros other than OpenIndiana, and I think that's important because everybody has different favorite distros. Now you can build on them. Various drivers updates. Less than 2 weeks ago, NVMe 1.0 went up, so you can run PCI SSDs using Intel's standard NVMe interface. Some previously closed source drivers have been open sourced. Thank you, Joyent. BNXE, the Broadcom NetExtreme 2 10 gig, which is now owned by QLogic. I don't know if they're keeping the Broadcom name or not, but it's different ownership now. Additional parts for the Broadcom 1 gig Ethernet that's still owned by Broadcom, more Intel updates, and others I've forgotten about. Some of our tooling, which was previously binary blobs, is now open sourced fully. Distributed make that we used to build Illumos Gate is now open sourced, and the math library, which was previously a binary blob, is now open sourced completely. There's lots of OpenZFS progress. Illumos is still the reference implementation of OpenZFS. The OpenZFS Developer Summit is next month. And if you're interested in that, you should follow what's going on there, because that is where you will get reports about what's going on in ZFS. And I am forgetting stuff, I'm sure.
They made lots of performance improvements in ZFS this year.
Mm-hmm.
The larger block size.
Yes, we
did I/O coalescing, the better tilde shoot downs. They went nuts.
Yes, the large block size was something that came up this morning during the training. That was new to the trainer, and so people in the audience were asking about that. So it was nice to deliver that good news to them. There are various things that have not been upstreamed yet because of various reasons. Works in progress are like that, and there are, like I said, many reasons. I'm going to go over them really quickly. The feature may require non-Illumos assistance. I have once in a while been asked, why isn't VM Atom ported over to OmniOS? Well, it's because I'm not porting over all of SmartOS. I'm sorry. And that's, sorry? Yes, yes. Well, not just that, but it's like, really? You go use SmartOS, and that's okay. We have different distros for different purposes. The feature itself might not yet fully be cooked. You may be a work in progress, and you may have it in your own distro, but you don't want to unleash it on the community yet. That's perfectly reasonable. The implementers themselves may have their day jobs overwhelming them, especially if you're in a company that gets a large number of support requests. I know technology that someone would love to upstream, but can't because he's too busy taking care of all of his customers. Also, for certain features, they may have grown over gaps in time, and as Illumos Gate, which is a continually moving target, gets updated too, the merges take over and become confusing, and you might not be able to just cherry pick the set of commits you need to upstream a certain feature. Gordon Ross, who I was hoping to talk here today more about his Windows file sharing work, he's an example of that last one, where he has been upstreaming bits and pieces of it as best he can, but with the moving target and the support load too, between those two, it's been hard for him to keep up with that upstreaming. There are some bad reasons for not upstreaming too, and I've heard some of these. We don't want to help our competitors. Well, guess what? Your competitors are helping you already. And even if you don't want to help your competitors for a limited time so you can get your market window in, you then fall into the previous trap of, well, Illumos Gate keeps moving along, and now it's that much harder to upstream. The other one is the laziness argument. Well, the community can take it upstream. The community doesn't have the metadata that you, the developer, does. You have the design notes, you have the history, and you may have some unspoken other items that you would know more than anyone else. At the end of the day, upstreaming is a form of communication, and successful upstreams happen when the developer is involved, even peripherally as a consultant. If somebody in the community really wants to take something and run with it, if the original developer is around to answer questions, that often can be good enough. Or you can just dive right into it and do it, which may require cooperation from your not-so-cooperative employer, and that depends. The results of a successful upstream will also not only lie in the code, but also lie in the bug report too, especially if there's detailed analyses that are done there. Another thing about the community that really hasn't changed much from last year is our diversity problem. We had about 150 contributors last year by Garrett's count. None of them were female. Same applies this year, except, well, the number of contributors has gone up somewhat, but still none of that. And there's slippery slopes about being tone deaf or dismissive here, and I'm going to try very hard not to be. And for these next two bullets, I'm going to just put this on me. I'm not sure if it's just the statistics and that we're still a small community, or whether or not we are being off-putting in some way. And I would appreciate feedback. I'm not going to throw anyone else under the bus right now for that. So I wanted to mention that. Last year, Garrett suggested that people hire for diversity. And I know of at least one Illumos distro that has female contributors. They have not yet upstreamed that stuff. And I don't think anybody from that distribution is here today, but I will say for the record, it would be nice if some of that stuff got upstreamed, not only for its technical content, but at least to show that we are making progress in that particular area of diversity. I really appreciate that. Going back to your question, there's no formal organization, and which is still true this year. We lack bounties, we lack governance, we lack ownership, marketing, legal presence even, and I'm adding one more, given the last slide, a harassment policy, but I think we need to get, I think we have to work from the top down on that first, but it's still something that we need to talk about, and I don't want to dive into the details of that right now because there are some touchy issues there, and I'm trying to move this along nicely without rat-holing too much. But I think, yeah, I'm not sure what the next steps are on that, but I have some ideas, and if you want to talk to me one-on-one afterwards or small on one, I'm more than happy to give you my opinions on that. I just won't use this pulpit to do that. There are works in progress in Illumos, getting back to exciting stuff, and I'm not going to spoil the upcoming talks to mention those. There is OpenZFS forward progress going on, not just the stuff that's already happened that Ryan enumerated, but next month at the OpenZFS Developer Summit, we're going to find out about more. We have some drivers in progress. We have NVMe beyond the 1.0 version of the spec. I have the Intel XL710 roughest of prototypes there. I have hardware that Intel actually provided me, which I was surprised with. And we do get some help from vendors on this front, but honestly, I think we could use some more, and this is one of them. Yes, Eric?
I was going to say we also have 12 gig SAS support now.
Oh, I should have mentioned that earlier. Yes, that is correct. We have 12 gig LSI support in the MPT SAS driver. I'm so sorry to not mention that. This, I want, if anybody remembers anything I talk about today, I want you to remember this. Please, hardware OEMs, do Illumos first development. I mentioned the concept of Solaris things earlier, and at least one hardware vendor I talked to let Oracle go off and write the driver for Oracle Solaris, and now we will never see it, and it has to be redone because Oracle really only cares about their own stuff. And we do have enough in common with Oracle Solaris, I believe, where if you write for Illumos first, you can get it out on Illumos platforms. You can then go and change or make any if-def modifications you do to run on Oracle Solaris. And if it's secret sauce, you can put it in a separate file. The CDDL helps you do just that. And then you don't shut out anyone, and you've opened your hardware market to even a larger customer base. And the community is ready to help their hardware manufacturers, especially those community members whose business model and commercial success depends on a flourishing hardware ecosystem. Nexenta, for example, is big proponents of, we are software-defined storage, software-defined this, which means they need to be hardware agile. So again, hardware OEMs, if anybody is out there listening who's a hardware OEM, I really would like it if you would do Illumos first development. And I'm more than happy to talk to you about that as well. You can come contact OmniTI, and I'll be more than happy to spend some time discussing that with you. Speaking of OmniOS, just need to put in a quick shameless plug for that. Our current long-term support release was updated last spring, R151014. That is going to be, if you've seen the OmniOS development model, that will be a long-term support for 2 years until the next long-term support. 3, sorry, Eric. Well, but 2 years and then the replacement comes and there's a year overlap.
But you can pay for support for 3 years.
Correct. The next stable release, which is our every 6 month, is R151016, which is going to arrive a little late this calendar year, late October, early November. I've been pretty good about getting them out on time, but the timing of this and I40E and things are gonna, I'm not gonna be able to have the next stable ready until late October. You can visit the OmniOS website for more. Any questions before we move on to Patrick? Yes? The Illumos website has one. I don't know how recent it is. Joyent SmartOS has a, what do you guys call it, the manufacturing list or the build material? The bombs are on GitHub for SmartOS. Those translate into almost any, if not all, the other Illumos distros as well. I think, if anything, the Illumos HCL should probably get more fresh updates. Yes, Albert?
I thought it was automatically generated from the device ID.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but it's not kept up. It's not kept up. It's a manual.
Oh, whenever, okay. Oh, okay. 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 Yes, Dale.
So you mentioned with the hardware OEMs doing Illumos first.
Yes.
Has there, I don't know if this is a hush-hush comment, but has there been any evidence, at least, of Oracle subsuming Illumos code into Solaris?
That particular question, has there been evidence of Oracle subsuming Illumos code? I have not seen any. If I did, I'd probably be a little more vocal about it.
Well, haven't they changed the syscall layer or something? Haven't they broken? So wouldn't that not work in line?
Hold on. Okay, so the syscall layer, I thought he was talking about device drivers, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
Okay. But yeah, to my knowledge, that has not been the case where Oracle has taken Illumos code. My sources report that that is verboten and people get fired for it, so they're very paranoid about that. The one thing I may or may not be able to say is Oracle can use their bully pulpit to convince hardware people that they should just write for Oracle Solaris first or let Oracle do it and be done with it. I can't get into too many more details about that without violating NDAs, but maybe it happens. Maybe. Any other questions before we kick it over to Joyance Patrick Mooney? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Fix the hum. It's really distracting.
The what?
There's a 60 hertz hum on the speaker. There's a ground loop.
It's not the microphone. You have to ask those people about that. Sorry. Okay. Oh, cute. Okay. So I guess the answer is no. Unless you have a generator handy. Yep. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Next up is Patrick Mooney from Joyant, and he is going to be talking about LX zones.